Rob Walton, the man behind Walmart's success, the largest retailer on the planet.
Rob Walton, business leader, conservationist, philanthropist.
Walmart's first family.
Rob Walton has been executive chairman for 23 years.
Walmart joins the $1 trillion club.
Companies only exist when they serve their communities.
Walton is buying the Broncos for $4.65 billion, largest sale in North American professional sports history.
There is a massive demand for leaders in conservation and the rest of business and society.
Well, this is such an honor. We've got the former chairman of Walmart here. It's been an absolute win for us to have Rob here, a huge philanthropist, a major name in the charity world, and really honored to have him here, especially as our first speaker today. So, Rob, first of all, thank you for doing this. I never thought when we were told we're going to have you as one of our speakers that the focus of your philanthropy would be African conservation. Can you sort of take us back to how that started?
I can, but it's great to be here with you.
Thank you.
And it's so nice that your conference has made this focus. It's really terrific. I grew up in a little town in Arkansas. You know, we were outdoors a lot. Family did a lot of canoeing growing up. In the early 90s, I took a typical trip to East Africa, to Tanzania and Kenya loop, and it didn't click particularly. But in early 2000s, I went to visit a friend of mine in South Africa. He was in the retail business, but he had a private game preserve there, and I was really, really impressed with what he was doing. He had been told by Nelson Mandela, his story was that some guys from Sand Parks, the South African National Parks operator, had broken off and were going to do a new park operation across Africa, and he should support them. And so I told him, I'll support them with so much if you'll put in twice as much. And we both did, and that was the birth of African Parks and really my passion for this work, my interest in it.
Why do you think Africa's so important in this space?
Well, the vast landscapes that are still there, unique animals, and very poor population, growing population, I think makes it important for us all. Also, our focus is on the good management of large landscapes for both people and nature. And good management leads to stability, and so much of Africa is unstable, but well-managed, protected areas.
So you're really taking your business background and trying to apply it in a philanthropic way in Africa.
That's our focus. We look for quality operators, good people. People are the core of anything that you can do successfully in business or any other field. Outcomes, focus, cost control, limited overhead for the NGOs that we support, but it's a lot of parallels.
So this session is named African Parks, on whose board you sit. You mentioned your introduction to Africa started with them. What convinced you that they were the right initial partner to sort of go in?
Well, I've just watched them for some years. This is 24 years ago, and so I've watched them grow. I watched them go from a single park at that time with little money. Still, obviously money's a big issue, a big shortage in this field. But they now manage 24 parks in 13 countries and are doing a really good job. It's the gold standard for that. But we've expanded our focus to other operators and to a group of landscapes we call Africa Keystone landscapes, and that's kind of what our, being my foundation, my focus is now.
So you said earlier, we talked about Africa and issues with governance and things, and this is about public-private partnerships. How do you get people who work in the public sector in Africa to work with the private sector, philanthropists like you?
The problem is financial. Governments just don't spend the money that's necessary to manage these areas. In Angola, for example, there are 8 of these keystone, we've identified 162 keystone landscapes, we call them. There are 8 of them in Angola, and the national budget for their conservation organizations is $3 million, which is probably not enough for a single park. So they see if there's a resource available and management available and it creates security and stability, they're interested. The challenge comes that in order to have good management in a park, the government has to delegate a lot of authority to somebody, to an NGO to operate it and oversee law enforcement, and a lot of governments resist that, but when resources and good management are available, we're finding that governments are willing to listen.
How easy is it to get an average person in those countries who are struggling to live day to day to get involved in these projects? We
just try to get, for people that can get to Africa and visit Africa, it is a great way to see what can happen and the difference that it can make. In Rwanda, Akagera Park there was poached out after the genocide in '95. African Parks took over the management in 2008 or 9. Very stable, strong government there. And that park is now, actually, it's a Big 5 park, which it had no lions, no rhinos, and I think those are the 2 animals that was missing out of those. But now a Big 5 park, great place to visit, and it's paying its own way after 15 years of management. So it's possible to make a real difference.
I can see your passion coming through about this, and quite emotional. You seem to approach it structurally. How do you ensure accountability?
We monitor expenditures. We inspect parks every 2 years is what our program is, to see that they are producing what they say they are. And there's a good way to do it. It's important also that the operator has the right kind of operating procedures, ways of dealing with human-wildlife conflict, there are human rights issues that arise, and the operator has to handle those in an appropriate way. So all those things are potential landmines, but a source of strength for a good operator.
Interesting. So our audience is business-minded. How would you advise them to think about philanthropy the way that you do? I mean, you've got a business background.
I do.
Yeah.
The thing that got me connected here in a way is the fact that there is such a great need, and that you can actually see the difference. I've been involved with conservation organizations for these 25 years, and so often you're just not quite sure. So often they're doing good work, but you just, as a donor, it's hard to see what that is. In this case, you can see it on the ground. You can see it in increased animal numbers and people doing better and less conflict. So I love the fact that we can actually see the results hard and fast.
When we spoke earlier, you spoke passionately about different countries you've been to and different things you've seen and shared. Can you share some of that with the audience, please?
One of the most interesting was a trip last year to South Sudan. African Parks took over management of 2 parks there, and we knew there was a big migration, but in the time they've been there, which is 3 years now, they've determined that there is a migration of various kinds of antelope, cob and tiang and other stuff, on the order of 5 million animals. And most people have heard of the migration, the wildebeest migration in Tanzania, which has 1.5 million or so animals. So this is 3 or 4 times as big as that. We were there in a helicopter and flew for 10 minutes with the earth just moving under us as a herd was charging along this area. But it's a fascinating area. I was more recently in the Copper Belt in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, to a park called a town called Lubumbashi, and the park there is a brand new park for African parks. There are no animals basically, but it doesn't have incursion of people, which is a threat to parks. But in this case, it's pretty intact, and so it'll turn into a terrific place, I think.
How do you think locals feel about people from outside the region coming in and helping them? Do you think they see you as a threat? They really value your input? How do you think they feel about that?
They have to see a benefit. They have to see a benefit. The parks, these areas will not be conserved. Animals won't continue to exist. And of course, they're all government assets. The land is government owned and controlled. And so people have to see the benefit. There are jobs. Often a good operator will do clinics for communities. Medical care is almost non-existent. And also help with schools, and education is another real challenge and a key to stability in these areas. So people have to feel like there is a benefit, but it's an issue for sure.
So you ran the data to determine there was a problem better addressed as a coalition. Tell us a little about this initiative you've launched with African Parks and others, and who you sort of got involved.
Yeah, we have something called the Africa Keystone Landscape Partnership, which is a consortium of 20 governments who've joined us, 3 founding NGOs, African Parks, WCS, the Bronx Zoo, many people would know, and Frankfurt Zoological Society, which does have a U.S. presence. Those 3 organizations run a total of 40 or so, 42 protected areas, and do a pretty good job. We've been joined by other organizations, including Peace Parks, which is based in South Africa, a creation founded by Anton Rupert of Richmond, wealthy South African family, and we've got the African Union support. So we're well on our way, but it's early days.
So when you think about other future potential partners, who would you like to have involved? Are there key people who can bring something to the table that you don't have now?
Well, we on the funding side, we have something that was passed in the last Congress called the U.S. Foundation for International Conservation. And that was a program where there would be a dollar-for-dollar match between U.S. government and private funding. That follows a model of something called Legacy Landscapes that the German government did a few years ago, which was a similar match and has been very successful. Our current government hasn't stood that organization up yet, but we're hopeful that they will. We keep working on that. So a combination of private and public funding would be great. The government gets some comfort in that, and individuals are happy to have a multiplier of their support. We have a number of foundations and individuals that are very generous in their support of this work, and we're trying to expand that.
Do you think it could ever go outside of Africa? You could take this model and use it in other parts of the world?
Well, for sure, but for me, Africa is enough of a bite.
No, of course.
These landscapes average 1 billion hectares, 2.5 million acres, and 162 of them is 5% of the continent. It's 34% of protected areas in Africa, of which there are 8,000.
Yeah.
Many, many small ones. But this is more than enough for me.
Have you got your family involved in this?
Family is, I go back a little bit to that trip to Africa in 2000. Out of that, my friend Paul Van Vlissingen connected me with Peter Seligman of Conservation International. And Peter had the idea, a little bit of history, business history, that a big business could make a difference in the world if it had the right attitude. And he made that pitch. He came to Arkansas, and I had him come to talk to us about a family foundation focus on the environment, which we did ultimately adopt. But Peter's goal was bigger, and he asked if he could talk to our CEO, Lee Scott, and he made the pitch that Walmart could make a difference, and it fell on fertile ground, and many meetings and reluctant NGOs joining us, frankly, because our reputation was not quite consistent with that, but led to our Walmart sustainability program that is going strong after 23 years. We just celebrated the 20th anniversary of Lee Scott's pronouncement that was going to be a focus for the company, and it's been really good. Family Foundation has an environmental focus area, and it's pretty big. It's focused primarily on water, and it's largely domestic, but domestic and marine. So very active, and interestingly, I've got a brother and a sister, and then between us we have 7 in the next generation, and every one of those is extremely active in various fields of interest, and not just business, but in investing in philanthropy.
How does anyone in this room get involved in what you're doing?
The easiest way to learn about what we're doing is website. Everybody has one, but it's AfricaKeystones.org. It has a good description of what we're doing, and working through these NGOs is the current way to do it. We're putting together options for people to choose where they want the funding to go without having to pick a particular NGO, and we'll have that up on the website shortly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You told me you've got 7 grandkids and 1 great-grandkid.
Yeah, I do.
I
started young.
If you had to plan a trip for them to go to Africa and see something like a migration or safari, where would you choose and why? That's a selfish question for me.
Well, funny you should ask. I'm just standing up. My foundation I've had for some time has just been me and 3 or 4 people. But I have actually stood up a board so the thing can continue on beyond my time, which is not unlimited. And on that board, I have my son, my youngest son, Ben, and my granddaughter, Rachel Penner, on the board. And we are headed to Zambia for our first board meeting in the end of March. So 2 parks, 3 parks in Zambia. We'll see different operators, Kafui is a huge park, one of the biggest, and potentially a park that could pay its way. It's not far from the capital, Lusaka, and one of the others is very well operated. North Luangwa is outstanding operation. So we'll get to see those, and I'm really excited.
Amazing. So outside of your philanthropy, how do you keep busy today?
Pardon?
Outside your philanthropy, how do you keep busy today, or is that everything you do?
Well, I've been a collector and racer of vintage cars for many years. I hate to admit it, but I got retired from my vintage car racing in August when I rolled a car, and I've been looking for a sign that it was time to hang it up. I'm 81, so I knew I had to do it sometime.
Do you still keep them even though you
I still have the cars.
Yeah.
I might go do a little track day once in a while, but no more racing. But
what's your favorite car?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably a little Alfa Romeo that I did a lot of trips in and raced a lot and traveled with that same son.
Yeah.
And my daughter also. So those are the memories that make it special. Not the most valuable, but
No, but memories are priceless.
That's right.
Finally, on your legacy, what would you like people to remember you for, particularly with your work in African parks?
Well, in the conservation world, I'd like to know that I'd like to be known as someone who was a catalyst for preserving these areas, reestablishing them for the benefit of people, and not just in Africa, but I think throughout the world. Our Walmart legacy is a great one. My father was incredible. We've had a great run there, and lots and lots of terrific people made that happen. But that made me proud.
Amazing. Well, Rob, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Please join me in thanking Rob for joining us.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.